Verses 17 to 20. The matter being determined, that Christ will go to Judea, and his disciples with him, they address themselves to their journey. In this journey some circumstances happened which the other evangelists record, as the healing of the blind man at Jericho, and the conversion of Zacchaeus. We must not reckon ourselves out of our way, while we are in the way of doing good, nor be so intent upon one good office as to neglect another. At length, he comes near to Bethany, which is said to be about 15 furlongs from Jerusalem, about 2 measured miles, v. 18. Notice is taken of this, that this miracle was in effect wrought in Jerusalem, and so was put to her score. Christ's miracles in Galilee were more numerous, but those in or near Jerusalem were more illustrious. There he healed one that had been diseased 38 years, another that had been blind from his birth, and raised one that had been dead 4 days. To Bethany Christ came, and observe what posture he found his friends therein. When he had been last with them, it is probable that he left them well, in health and joy, but when we part from our friends, though Christ knew, we know not what changes may affect us or them before we meet again. He found his friend Lazarus in the grave, v. 17. When he came near the town, probably by the burying place belonging to the town, he was told by the neighbors, or some persons whom he met, that Lazarus had been 4 days buried. Some think that Lazarus died the same day that the messenger came to Jesus with the tidings of his sickness, and so reckoned 2 days for his abode in the same place and 2 days for his journey. I rather think that Lazarus died at the very instant that Jesus, our friend, sleepeth. He is now newly fallen asleep, and that the time between his death and burial, which among the Jews was but short, with the 4 days of his lying in the grave, was taken up in this journey, for Christ travelled publicly, as appears by his passing through Jericho, and his abode at Zacchaeus' house took up some time. Promised salvations, though they always come surely, yet often come slowly. He found his friends that survived in grief. Martha and Mary were almost swallowed up with sorrow for the death of their brother, which is intimated where it is said that many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them. Note: ordinarily, where death is there are mourners, especially when those that were agreeable and amiable to their relations, and serviceable to their generation, are taken away. The house where death is called the house of mourning, Eccle 7:2. When man goes to his long home, the mourners go about the streets, Eccle 12:5, or rather sit alone, and keep silence. Here was Martha's house, a house where the fear of God was, and on which his blessing rested, yet made a house of mourning. Grace will keep sorrow from the heart, ch 14:1, not from the house. Where there are mourners there ought to be comforters. It is a duty we owe to those that are in sorrow to mourn with them, and to comfort them, and our mourning with them will be some comfort to them. When we are under the present impressions of grief, we are apt to forget those things which would minister comfort to us, and therefore have need of remembrancers. It is a mercy to have remembrancers when we are in sorrow, and our duty to be remembrancers to those who are in sorrow. The Jewish doctors laid great stress upon this, obliging their disciples to make conscience of comforting the mourners after the burial of the dead. They comforted them concerning their brother, that is, by speaking to them of him, not only of the good name he left behind, but of the happy state he was gone to. When godly relations and friends are taken from us, whatever occasion we have to be afflicted concerning ourselves, who are left behind and miss them, we have reason to be comforted concerning those who are gone before us to a happiness where they have no need of us. This visit which the Jews made to Martha and Mary is an evidence that they were persons of distinction, and made a figure, as also that they behaved obligingly to all, so that though they were followers of Christ, yet those who had no respect for him were civil to them. There was also a providence in it, that so many Jewish ladies it is probable, should come together, just at this time, to comfort the mourners, that they might be unexceptionable witnesses of the miracle, and see what miserable comforters they were, in comparison with Christ. Christ did not usually send for witnesses to his miracles, and yet had none been by but relations this would have been accepted against, therefore God's counsel so ordered it that these should come together accidentally, to bear their testimony to it, that infidelity might stop her mouth. What passed between him and his surviving friends at this interview? When Christ defers his visits for a time, they are thereby made the more acceptable, much the more welcome, so it was here. His departures endear his returns, and his absence teaches us how to value his presence. We have here the interview between Christ and Martha. We are told that she went and met him, v. 20. It should seem that Martha was earnestly expecting Christ's arrival, and inquiring for it. Either she had sent out messengers, to bring her tidings of his first approach, or she had often asked, "Saw you him whom my soul loveth?" So that the first who discovered him ran to her with the welcome news. However it was, she heard of his coming before he arrived. She had waited long, and often asked, "Is he come?" and could hear no tidings of him, but long looked for came at last. At the end the vision will speak, and not lie. Martha, when the good news was brought that Jesus was coming, threw all aside, and went and met him, in token of a most affectionate welcome. She waived all ceremony and compliment to the Jews who came to visit her, and hastened to go and meet Jesus. Note, when God by His grace or providence is coming towards us in ways of mercy and comfort, we should go forth by faith, hope, and prayer to meet Him. Some suggest that Martha went out of the town to meet Jesus, to let him know that there were several Jews in the house, who were no friends to him, that if he pleased he might keep out of the way of them. When Martha went to meet Jesus, Mary sat still in the house. Some think she did not hear the tidings, being in her drawing room, receiving visits of condolence, while Martha, who was busied in the household affairs, had early notice of it. Perhaps Martha would not tell her sister that Christ was coming, being ambitious of the honor of receiving him first. Sancta est prudentia clam fratribus clam parentibus ad Christum esse confer. Holy prudence conducts us to Christ, while brethren and parents know not what we are doing. Maldone in locum. Others think she did hear that Christ was come, but was so overwhelmed with sorrow that she did not care to stir, choosing rather to indulge her sorrow, and to sit poring upon her affliction, and saying, "I do well to mourn." Comparing this story with that in Lu 10:38, etc., we may observe the different tempers of these two sisters, and the temptations and advantages of each. Martha's natural temper was active and busy. She loved to be here and there, and at the end of everything, and this had been a snare to her when by it she was not only careful and cumbered about many things, but hindered from the exercises of devotion. But now in a day of affliction this active temper did her a kindness, kept the grief from her heart, and made her forward to meet Christ, and so she received comfort from him the sooner. On the other hand, Mary's natural temper was contemplative and reserved. This had been formerly an advantage to her, when it placed her Christ's feet, to hear his word, and enabled her there to attend upon him without those distractions with which Martha was cumbered. But now in the day of affliction that same temper proved a snare to her, made her less able to grapple with her grief, and disposed her to melancholy. But Mary sat still in the house. See here how much it will be our wisdom carefully to watch against the temptations, and improve the advantages, of our natural temper. Here is fully related the discourse between Christ and Martha.